This week on Engage the Sage.
Hi everyone, I'm Don Saucier. Welcome to this week's episode of Engage the Sage. This week I'm going to talk to you about teaching evaluations. We're calling this video Teaching Evaluations 101 because we're going to provide you some basic overviews, what they are, why they're good, some potential pitfalls with them, and how they should be used. I'm imagining when I say the word teaching evaluations, you probably have some associations with them. Maybe you've completed them as students. Maybe you've seen your students complete them for you as an instructor. You probably had some experiences that you enjoyed. You probably have some experiences that you'd like to forget. When I'm talking about teaching evaluations, this is a term a lot of people use. It's important to understand what it is that I mean. I am talking about student evaluations of teaching. What these are student perception data that students complete about your course at the end of the semester. This is a very, very common procedure. I think it's almost a universal procedure that is used as part of evaluation of teaching, that students at the end of the semester get to tell you about their thoughts on your class. This is typically a standardized form that your university will use so that students will complete the same form for all of the classes that they take, and they will do so anonymously. When we refer to these as teaching evaluations, that's a little bit of a misnomer because these are actually not direct evaluations or assessments of your teaching. What these are is a little bit closer almost to a customer satisfaction survey. We're asking the students who took our class what they thought at the end. I want to be clear, there is value to doing this. It is important to know what your students thought about the class. It's important to see what their perceptions of your class are and all of its elements. But it's not necessarily a complete, comprehensive, or even appropriate way to evaluate how good a teacher someone is, or even how good they did that semester. These methods of teaching evaluation should be supplemented by a lot of other methods of teaching evaluation to determine someone's actual teaching effectiveness or hopefully teaching excellence. Because these are student perceptions of your teaching, they might pick up things other than actually how you taught. Because this is student perception data, and it's really not linked to the demonstrations of learning that they actually produced in your class, it means that students can respond kind of however they would like. And because it's anonymous, there might be the occasion for some students to be maybe a little bit less fair or even less kind than they might be otherwise. It is important that we understand that these forms of teaching evaluations are not truly objective and they are not free of bias. There is evidence to suggest that teaching evaluations completed by students in this manner are prone to bias toward instructors based on their demographics, for instance, or bias based on the course. We might find differences for large introductory courses versus upper level courses that are taught only to majors, for instance. Where I see the value in this student perception data is to inform us about what our students thought. I think it's important to know what your students perceived about your teaching in that semester, and this can help me to potentially continue to do the things that were perceived well and potentially revise the things that were perceived less well. These forms of teaching evaluation should be used as formative, not summative. And what that means are these are things that are helping me progress toward excellence in teaching rather than an end-all, be-all evaluation of my essence as a teacher. This is something that helps me improve. It doesn't tell me who I am in essence. We have several videos in our Engage the Sage series that talk about demonstrations of teaching excellence and how it is that you want to approach the teaching evaluation process. In those videos, you're going to see there are many other metrics that you can potentially get involved in to demonstrate your teaching effectiveness and excellence. For example, I think that peer observation is an amazing way to get feedback about your teaching. I recommend finding the teacher you most respect and inviting them to observe your class and to give you constructive feedback on the things that you're doing well and should continue and the things that you can improve. I also love using demonstrations of your students' learning, showing what they actually could do at the end of your class as a wonderful way to demonstrate how valuable your class was. I think having and demonstrating an excellent teaching philosophy is a wonderful thing to do and to show how your practices are inspired by that teaching philosophy. This is impactful for me when I'm evaluating teachers. I'm also a big fan on the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning. So if you do research on teaching practices, on things like instructor and student engagement like I do. These are things that really show me that you're striving to increase our knowledge base about teaching to hopefully show up in practical recommendations to make the teaching and learning process more successful. All of this is to say that you can find other ways to get information to suggest your teaching effectiveness or teaching excellence, even informally and formally from your students beyond this formal student evaluation of teaching process. I would consider potentially using things like course reflection reports or top things learned or semester projects that really encapsulate all of the learning in a class as things that you will intentionally do, not only for the benefit of your students, but to demonstrate that your class does what your class is supposed to do. Now, at this point, I do want to return to those teaching evaluations that students complete because we are going to probably have to do them. I know at my university they're mandatory that we do these in every course that we teach. So given that these are going to be part of what we do, I'm going to give you some recommendations to make those be better. When I say better, I don't necessarily mean more positive. I mean more productive in informing you about your teaching practices. My first recommendation to make these more productive is to tell your students why they're doing them. Let them know what the purpose is. Explain to them, both in person and maybe by a video announcement, why you want their honest feedback to improve your class for future semesters. Let them know you want to make sure that the things that you're doing right, you'll continue to do. So let you know about those. And the things that can be revised, you would love to hear your thoughts on how they should be revised. And then you can use these to inform your teaching decisions in that future semester. What I'm advocating that we do is we make our students collaborators in helping us achieve teaching excellence. Let them know that you value their honest, constructive, and specific feedback, so their comments just don't devolve into something that is not useful. One of the issues I sometimes see is that my students will say, hey, this class was great, or I hated this class. Neither one of those tells me how I should teach. I don't know what they thought was great, and I don't know why they hated it. So letting our students know that specific feedback is the only way that I can make sure my class stays great or to help future students not hate it is going to be helpful. I'm going to recommend that you let your students know when teaching evaluations are going to happen and you give them class time to do it. If they're going to have to need a device, if you're going to complete these on an online format, letting them know that ahead of time so they'll have a device ready to do that is also going to be important. What I want is all of my students to contribute rather than a third or half or something like that, where it's going to be a little bit more inconclusive about what their recommendations actually mean. I won't know if they represent my students more globally. I do not recommend, and my university might even say you can't, I do not recommend you incentivize or give extra credit for the completion of these teaching evaluations. This could interfere both with the potential bias that might have and potentially creating a demand characteristic that they think they have to evaluate you positively. It also might interfere with their anonymity, which is going to be a big problem because in order to give them extra credit, you have to know that they completed the teaching evaluation. I also have problems when someone will give extra credit to say, 80% of the students did the teaching evaluations, the whole class gets credit, because now someone is getting a grade bump or not based on someone's performance other than their own, which philosophically I have a problem with. One of the best recommendations, though, that I can give you for student evaluations of your teaching is to include supplemental items. Typically what will happen is your university is going to have a standardized form, but they will typically have the opportunity for you to add items of your own creation. These, for me, are amazing in both providing some structure for my students' responses and to collect some focused data on my teaching practices that I would love my students' input on. A really easy, loose organization that you might want to include for supplemental questions is to ask your students these 3 questions, and I got to give credit to Tucker Jones, who suggested these to me. These 3 questions are, what did you like about this class? What did you not like about this class that I can't change? And what did you not like about this class that I can change? What that does is collects information about the stuff you should continue to do, about the stuff that maybe they didn't like, but they understand you're not going to change. So maybe they say, I don't want this class to meet at 8 in the morning, but I understand it has to. I wish this class didn't cover this content, but I understand that it has to. That they get the opportunity to vent without you needing to change anything. And then that third question, the things they expect you might have some control over, that might be really where some of those tweaks or revisions could be inspired. Other supplemental items that I will include in my classes is ones that look at the student's perceived pursuit and accomplishment of the various student learning outcomes in my class. So I might have an SLO like understanding and applying research methods to a problem of my own choosing. I might ask, how much did you accomplish that goal? That would give me some indication of what they thought they learned. It's not as direct as actually looking at a project that shows that, but it does let the student tell me how much they think the class did what they hoped it would do. I also love supplemental questions that ask about specific assignments or assessments. How valuable did you see the weekly reflections? How fair did you think the exams were? How much did you enjoy completing the final project? These are things that help me kind of understand where, if anywhere, did they see potential issues as well as potential successes. In my classes, I love supplemental questions asking about specific teaching practices. I might ask how well I bring the 5 aspects of peace. So how prepared was I? How good was my expertise? How authentic was I? How caring was I? How engaged was I? These are important to me in my teaching persona and my teaching philosophy. I can ask my students to give me feedback about how well they did that. Now, you've done your teaching evaluations. Your students have completed them. You've included the supplemental questions to do some targeted data collection. You get those back. I think it's important to understand that this is data. This is information. And now it's up to you to decide what to do with that. Maybe you make a course change. Maybe you don't. Maybe there's some things about your class that your students maybe didn't like, that next time you're going to be a little bit more explicit to that next cohort of students about why that's important to your class. By the way, if you do that as a mid-semester evaluation, you might be able to do that in a current class to let them know this is the reason we're doing things that maybe they're not enjoying much, but maybe they'll start to understand why you've included it with that additional explanation. I typically use my teaching evaluations to inspire tweaks. These small revisions, these small improvements in my class from semester to semester, but I typically don't overhaul my class based on the student feedback. Maybe over time, that class evolves to look quite different, but from semester to semester, I do little improvements and little tweaks to see how I can optimize my teaching excellence. And I don't chase student evaluation data. I don't try to maximize my class for every single comment, because sometimes if I'm making a tweak based on a single student's comment, I might actually create a problem for all the students that didn't have a problem with that. So I'm not going to chase my student evaluation data. I'm going to teach to the best of my ability and hope the student evaluation data reflects my teaching excellence. So in conclusion, the student evaluation data of our teaching, these teaching evaluations have flaws, right? They have biases that cannot be ignored. These do not provide a direct or a complete assessment of our teaching effectiveness. These should only be used in combination of other evidence of our teaching effectiveness and excellence for our evaluation, for instance, like for promotion, tenure, merit evaluation, hiring, or awards. But I do think they are valuable in telling us what our students think. And what our students think and their reasoned perceptions, especially to some of the questions that we've created specifically to collect data about our classes, these can inform our teaching in ways to maximize our ability to support our students' learning and student success. In the comments below, I'd love to hear any questions you have about student evaluations of our teaching. I'd also love to hear any experiences you have or any supplemental questions you use in your classes to get at your teaching effectiveness and excellence. Thank you for watching this episode of Engage the Sage. Please like, subscribe, sign up for notifications, share us on social media, and we'll see you next time on Engage the Sage.